Financially broke state governments in New South Wales and Victoria discovered a long time ago that they could not afford to fund desperately needed motorway and freeway upgrades and new projects. So what they did a deal with private enterprise to build what they needed in exchange for back-ended contracts that allowed companies like Transurban to toll the roads that they actually built. Now in Sydney, that public-private tie-up included building Sydney's rail connection to Sydney Airport, now a greatly needed transport link, but users realised quickly that it was a very expensive way to get to your flights. Private enterprise also built the Sydney Cross-City Tunnel to connect the eastern suburbs and the inner west. That was so expensive to use that for years it was simply basically empty. Sydney now has the dubious title announced today of being the most tolled city in the world. And just yesterday, New South Wales Premier Chris Medswell, he announced he was introducing two-way tolling on the iconic Sydney Harbour Bridge and Harbour Tunnel in 2028. Now, this is despite the bridge tolling ceasing decades ago after being paid off. So the taxpayers have paid for it through tolls. This is the same Premier, Chris Minns, by the way, who before being elected made a rash of promises about tolls and toll capping at $60 a week, who now will limit toll rebates for the biggest toll users, toll customers, to $5,000 a year. The announcement yesterday tried to run some vague argument about fairness, accusing residents of Sydney's lower North Shore and the northern beaches of, quote, having an easy ride. Minns' election promise was, of course, pretty simple. He promised, quote, no new tolls on existing roads. Well, what does he think the bridge and the Harbour Tunnel are? And on tunnels, that brings me to Melbourne and Labor's long overdue and over budget new link between the western suburbs and the city. It's called, imaginatively, wait for it, the Westgate Tunnel. After the congested bridge, Westgate, that's what it's named after. Now, bizarrely, there has been a late afternoon media conference by the state government after the biggest selling newspaper in Melbourne, the Herald Sun, that I work for, by the way, ran a 6-page wraparound this morning. It's a guide announcing that the tunnel will open on Sunday, and it tells you how much you'll pay in tolls. For hours today, the state government refused to confirm if that date was actually accurate. The newspaper guide, being sponsored by the toll company Transurban, that will collect the tolls on all vehicles using exits from the new road complex. Now, late today, Premier Allen, as I said, wheeled out the usual nodding heads and confirmed what was announced by the paper earlier this morning.
Particularly excited to be able to announce today to Victorians that the Westgate Tunnel will be open to motorists from this Sunday, the 14th of December. And this is a big moment for the future of our great city and state because it's going to transform the way people move around our city and state.
How embarrassing is that? And thanks, Premier. We read about it in the paper. We knew it was going to open on Sunday. And surprise, surprise, one of the two tunnels, one outbound and there's one inbound, carries an Indigenous name, the Premier explained.
4-kilometre outbound tunnel will be known as Eureka, and this is in recognition of the workers and the workforce. It's also appropriate as you head through the tunnel, and if you keep going, you'll end up in Ballarat, which of course is the home of that great history of democracy in our state, the home of the Eureka Stockade and how that laid the foundations for our city and state and the democracy and the rights of workers that were fought for at the Eureka Stockade. For the 2.5-kilometre inbound tunnel, it will be given a Bunurong name. It will be known as Bundawa.
Well, I guess when you sign a treaty with Indigenous Victorians, you have to use Indigenous place names for your projects. Incredibly, and this shows the amazing lack of knowledge and the hysterical ignorance of the people running Victoria. The outbound tunnel, as you saw there with the Premier, is to be called the Eureka Tunnel, as we just heard from that grab with Premier Allen. Now, Eureka is named after the Eureka Stockade on the Ballarat goldfields. And what exactly were the miners at Eureka protesting about? Well, they were protesting about a gold mining licence tax, a government tax that none of the miners wanted, and so they set up the Eureka Stockade. And the Premier, who has introduced widely unpopular taxes like the Emergency Services Levy and land tax, thinks it's cute to name her expensive tunnel Eureka. If it weren't so depressingly sad, it would be laughable. Now, what piqued my interest in this new link to and from the west of Melbourne, where hundreds of thousands of new homes have been built and where many migrant families have settled, is the imposition for the first time that I can work out in any major capital in Australia, a congestion tax or a congestion charge. Now, as today's guide points out, and I wrote about this some weeks back in the Herald Sun, if you use the city exit in the AM peak, Monday to Friday, between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m, you pay a toll, a higher toll than if you use it later in the day. Even motorcycles pay the toll, and scooters. Two-wheelers pay $3.27. Cars will be tolled $6.54. And wait for it, light commercial vehicles, so your very popular dual cab utes used by every tradie in the country, and food delivery vans, well, they will pay a whopping $10.47 one way once if they go between 7 and 9 a.m. at that exit. Now, congestion tax in anyone's language. Now, a couple of things about that and the existing Westgate Bridge and its existing exit into the city. That remains toll-free. So what did the bright sparks in Parliament think will happen? Well, of course, after being slugged a couple of times when you take your ute through the new toll booth, the tradies will go back to the bridge and the traffic will go back to where it was. The delivery firms will add the tolls to the price of goods they're delivering, which is your food, and the exit will end up a ghost town. Now, I'll talk to a transport expert shortly, but it doesn't end there. No wonder the government didn't want this information out there in the paper in a panel that everyone can read. Listen to the charges that this new piece of road infrastructure will charge heavy vehicles, including buses and heavy trucks that use the new link. $19.78 during the day for a one-trip, one-way toll. $13.19 at night. A 24-hour user pass will cost, and note this is listed as Westgate, so I'm presuming, and I have confirmed this now, it will presume to go on the existing bridge. $49.45. And if you use CityLink as well once, it'll cost you $95.10 to go over the Westgate Bridge, which currently is free, and onto CityLink. I mean, the government says this heavy vehicle toll on an existing road, the Westgate Bridge, is to avoid big trucks using rat runs or suburban streets to go west-east. But won't that cause a search for free road access instead of a toll? They call them rat runs. Now, Melbourne might be set to overtake Sydney as the road toll capital of the world. But at least with the Sydney toll road network, it's finished, it's open and it works. Melbourne is years behind on its Northwest Link, which has dropped top speeds on the Eastern Freeway from 100 kilometres an hour, 4 lanes wide, down to 80. And it looks like that 80k speed limit will stay there, while a heavily used daily commute and holiday period road, Peninsula Link, started a resurface project, mysteriously ran out of time or money to finish it, and so now has that road speed limited at 80 kilometres an hour in both directions. What a mess. And welcome to your expensive time-limited congestion tax and more expensive grocery bills and truck companies, passing on expensive tolls to consumers in Australia's biggest cities. And here's a fun fact to finish on. Adelaide, my old hometown, has no road tolls on any roads yet.